Elizabeth Holmes, the founder of blood testing startup Theranos, that once seemed to promise the impossible, has been found guilty of 4 charges of fraud. The charismatic young executive had been hailed as a visionary who would revolutionise healthcare, gaining almost $1 billion from high-profile investors. It's a stunning downfall of the former tech darling, who now faces up to 20 years in prison. Liz Maddock has the story.
Leaving court a united front with her partner and parents, Elizabeth Holmes won't be walking free for long.
Do you have anything to say?
The former Theranos CEO has been found guilty of fraud and conspiracy, ending a lengthy trial that captivated and rattled the tech world.
I thank the jurors for their thoughtful and determined service that ensured verdicts could be reached. The guilty verdicts in this case reflect Ms. Holmes' culpability in this large-scale investor fraud, and she must now face sentencing for her crimes.
Holmes was a Silicon Valley celebrity. Her multi-billion-dollar startup promised to revolutionise medical testing before it crashed and burned in a blaze of fraud claims.
Theranos had a lot of promise. It was one of the most exciting companies to emerge, and many people considered Elizabeth Holmes would be the next Mark Zuckerberg. The problem is that they got their technology out before it was proven.
Over 15 weeks, the jury was convinced she lied to investors in the pursuit of money and fame, convicting her of 3 counts of wire fraud and 1 count of conspiracy to commit wire fraud.
You founded this company 12 years ago, right?
However, the jury wasn't convinced she defrauded patients and was unable to reach a verdict on 3 counts of deceiving investors.
In this case, because of the amount of money that she was defrauded and the jury found her guilty of, which was $144 million defrauding investors, that significantly increases her exposure to more time. But it's the judge's decision to make.
Holmes is facing up to 20 years in prison, plus fines and restitution. She is expected to appeal, but for now, the verdict closes a case that came to symbolise and serve as a warning to Silicon Valley's culture of hype and hustle. Liz Maddock, TRT World.
Scott Lucas is a professor of international politics at the University of Birmingham in the UK. He explains why the Elizabeth Holmes trial was so captivating to the public.
Was one of those basically, made-for-TV trials. Elizabeth Holmes, very dynamic, charismatic, who had co-founded this company at the age of 19, dropping out of Stanford University, and then, the youngest American female billionaire. But the other side, which is the serious side, that kind of gets lost. And that is, we're not just talking about Silicon Valley and technology and startup companies, although that's a very important issue. We're talking about a specific here, which was a technology company promising an advance for people regarding their health care, specifically the testing of blood that could quickly detect a series of important conditions, the idea that you could save lives with early diagnosis. And that, I think, is really the serious point about this. There are many startups that rise and that fail. There are some startups that may skate close to the line in terms of what they promise. But in this case, when Holmes went to investors and said, we have the technology to actually deliver to people these life-saving advances, well, according to the jury, and therefore the court, she overstated her case. And by overstating her case, I find that significant. We're in the middle of a pandemic where we really need medical technology to help us get to the other side of it. The crux of this is in terms of proximity. And that is, in terms of proximity, Elizabeth Holmes wasn't talking to patients directly on a day-to-day basis. She was talking to Forbes magazine. She was hanging out with Bill Clinton and Henry Kissinger. And most importantly, her proximity was not to patients, but to investors, to those people who directly put money into her company. And while I think we can make an argument that, yes, potentially patients were deceived over this, people may have gotten false hope about what this meant for their medical care, Holmes wasn't dealing with them. She was dealing with the money people. And that really is the legal crux of why you could convict her, or why the jury at least could find her guilty on those charges, but not on the others. Look, this is not new. I mean, I'm an old fella, and in the 20th century, before this internet thing and before Silicon Valley, the game was the same. You want to promote a business, you play the public relations game, and the public relations game turns on celebrity. the VIPs who are on there. And Elizabeth Holmes got that side of it right in a 21st century environment. And this is what is different when we are talking not only about high tech, but about knowing about it almost immediately. I think what this means is that while the game has not changed, you try to get the important people on board, the stakes are higher in terms of reliability. We're not just talking about making money. We're not just talking about celebrity. We are talking about the fact that at a critical moment in the 21st century, you need to not only talk the talk, you've got to walk the walk and be able to deliver. And having a few names on your board doesn't work, especially when you're making claims that you can't back up.